Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Monday, September 9th, 2024. And for those of you that follow me or know, it was a very interesting weekend. I'm not hurting as bad as I was the last couple of days, but I just want to, before I bring my guest in, and I'll do a post later and probably go live later and just thank folks. But I want to thank everybody that sent salutations, birthday wishes, Cash App, even though I didn't put it up, y'all are slick. Cash App. I want to thank the owners of Grace by Nia Grace. I want to thank Luther Pinkney from the Pearl. I want to also thank Brother Helder and also Charlene from Estella. And also Saturday was Brother Robert Hugh. And yesterday, Sunday, I was with Dr. Rufus Falk Levi and Brother Jarvis, or some that have known him a long time, Brother Teddy, at the Mix Boston. And it was a great weekend. Not going to get into other names right now before I get in trouble. But I'm glad to be with you all this morning. I'm glad to have 53 years here on this earth. And we'll get into that later. So without further ado, this morning we're going to speak with the president of the Massachusetts Black Lawyers Association. 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to speak with their former president, attorney Sharice Perry. So shout out to her. But we're bringing in our current president right now, who is attorney Avana Epperson Temple. I couldn't see her last name here on the screen. And so she's going to come in and chat with us. She does a few things, and, we move in the health space here, and she does some stuff over in that space as well. So definitely, that's an outlet for her. And we may delve a little bit into some of the mental health of being an attorney in these being a Black attorney, being a Black woman attorney in these very interesting times. So with that said, attorney, do you prefer Epperson-Temple or Temple? What do you prefer?
Epperson-Temple.
Epperson-Temple. All right, we got to get that whole thing in there. Okay. Yes, ma'am. So good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe this morning. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm glad for you to be here with us. And so if I sort of jumped in, and we have some things we're going to talk about, but I mentioned that we are in a very interesting time when it comes to the legal criminal system, when it comes to being a Black woman, when it comes to being a woman who's in leadership and an attorney. And so after your introduction, I want to jump right in. After your introduction and greeting to the audience, if you could, in one word, describe the status of things based on what I just said. Not a heavy lift at all on this Monday morning.
And I actually heard you do a similar exercise with one of your other guests, but I did not prepare the one word for how I was feeling today.
Wait a minute, you did. Y'all are attorneys. Attorney Perry was the one. We just had a different rigor. Yes. Now, go ahead. Greet the folks, and we'll jump right into the wonderful work your associates are doing.
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Avana Epperson-Temple. I currently serve as the president of the Massachusetts Black Lawyers Association. We were founded in 1973, and I've served on the board for 7 consecutive years prior to my current term as president. In addition to my work with the MBLA, I also serve on the board of Pine Street Inn, which is New England's largest homeless services provider. And I also serve on the board of the Anti-Defamation League for the New England region, which is a civil rights organization focused on combating all forms of hate, including anti-Semitism and racism. Outside of my board appointments, I do some pro bono work with the Women's Bar Foundation Family Law Project. I also am a fitness instructor at HealthWorks. I teach cardio dance once a week there. Great way to de-stress, great way to kind of release the negative toxins from the week sometimes. And it's a great way to meet people as well. Outside of those things, I also have a full-time job. I work at Peabody and Arnold, which is a medium-sized law firm located right by South Station. I focus more on business litigation, professional liability matters, and insurance coverage matters as well.
And so, that one word.
The one word to describe the state of things. I mean, everything is so nuanced, right? We're in a state where, and this might not be following your directions because it's not one word, but we're in a state where there's a lot of hope, right? When we think about what's going on with our election, when we think about some of the progress that's been made over the past 4 years, but it's also a time where Black people are still needing to be resilient, right? Unfortunately, looking at the stats of Black attorneys in this nation, right? The growth of Black attorneys has not really increased over the past decade. The ABA, the American Bar Association, put out a demographics report for 2023. And according to the report, the Black attorneys make up 5% of our legal profession, right? But in 2013, Black attorneys made 4.8% of our legal profession, right? So that growth is not matching, one, the population of Black people in the nation, but two, there are clearly some barriers that need to be addressed, right? And there's a lot going on. I'm sure we'll touch on it throughout the remainder of this conversation, but it's very nuanced. I mean, it's a time to be hopeful. There's a time where, in some aspect, we're seeing more representation, especially when we look at leadership within Massachusetts politics, right? We have Andrea Campbell. We also have Maura Healey, who is a huge proponent of diversity, inclusion, people of color. We have Mayor Wu. There are fantastic
Congresswoman.
Yes, Ayanna Pressley. There are fantastic things happening, but at the same time, it's not enough, right? It's just not enough. And we can't look at the wonderful accomplishments of people in this state and look at that as an example to say, okay, now things are equitable because we have an example of 10, 15 people being incredibly resilient, having to deal with unfair circumstances, unfair odds. The goalpost is at different points for different people, and use that to say, okay, we are at a place where we've reached true equity, because that's just not.
So nuance is definitely an appropriate word. And I'm not in this industry, but just by observation, and to hear the decrease in a time where representation matters a lot, in a time where presumably there may be more people of color due to the times, filing cases and going into litigation around discrimination with the decrease, of DEI efforts and money and positions and things like that. And so I find it surprising to hear. And if I heard you right, the latest number you said was 5%?
5%.
And that particular, if you could reiterate, that particular demographic are for women of color?
Black attorneys.
Period. Male, female, and on the spectrum.
Yes. And that's obviously far less than the population of Black people in the nation.
Can I just ask a quick question, not to deviate, and we'll get to the questions. Do you find that in New England, and particularly in Massachusetts, and we'll go to Boston, is that number higher? Only because I can start, for lack of a better word, naming some names. We named Attorney Perry. There's Wasan Hall. There's Tanisha Sullivan. There is Stephanie Everett. There are so many Black attorneys to whom we can point here in this city and this region. So is that a lack of equity as great here in this region and state and maybe city? Hey, Andrea Campbell is definitely one, our chief law enforcement officer in the state. And so that's so interesting that is the 5% is very interesting compared to the experience of, I could probably, if I thought about it more, name another 10 or 12 Black women, Black, brown men attorneys. And so are you familiar? If is that lack of equity as low or lack of equity as high here in this region?
It is, and I think Massachusetts, we're very lucky to have a number of superstars
Yes.
in this area that are putting themselves out there and fighting the good fight and doing the very, very difficult invisible work, but also making themselves visible in terms of, standing up and standing proud and 10 tones down, but standing for what they stand for, and promoting what they stand for and being willing to have these tough conversations. But the Supreme Judicial Court put out a demographic study as well. And I believe those numbers are Black individuals make up 9% of the state population, but only 2% of lawyers.
So it's wait. So it's lower in this
out of the population of Massachusetts.
Yep.
2%. That's what we're looking at.
Wow. And so in some respect, that is alarming. But then on the other side of it, we are blessed in this city to have a lot of Black and brown women, Black and brown men, attorneys. And so that I didn't mean to deviate like that, but I tell my guests all the time, we may have a briefing, but I feed off the energy and responses of my guests. And so as the newly inaugurated president there at the Massachusetts Black Lawyers Association, what are some of the key initiatives and goals that you plan to prioritize around or in your first year to advance this organization's mission and goals to around equity?
Mm-hmm. Well, the central themes that we're going to be operating under for this programming year are elevating the holistic well-being of our members, the overall well-being of our members, which will include financial well-being, physical well-being, and emotional well-being. And then with respect to the organization, the entity, the goal is to strengthen and safeguard the financial stability of the organization, right? Each year, the MBLA gives out between $11,000 to $16,000 of scholarships to deserving law students, right? And that is the way that the MBLA is trying to close that gap in terms of allowing law students to be able to really study for the bar exam and not so much have to deal with paying for rent, dealing with the food, food insecurity, dealing with any distractions really that can take them away from studying for the bar. And then we also are working to support our law students as they pay for their books and as they pay for housing. The MBLA, we actually had a fundraising event last Friday, and we had a law student, one of our 2024 law student honorees, speak, and she spoke about how her law school tuition was going up $20,000 from last year to this year, right? And in the room, you're hearing from people who've been practicing, judges, people who've been on the bench for years, who are talking about how they paid $10,000 for their law school education, right? And at this point in time, you have people paying, $200,000 for 3 years of law school. Hopefully there's no undergrad debt with it, but people are coming out into this profession, entering this profession with just such a heavy burden, right? They're not able to really make decisions based on passion so much if you're focused on how do you navigate the significant challenge of student loan debt. There are people who are postponing having families, there are lawyers who cannot afford to buy houses. I mean, it's a very, and it sounds like it shouldn't be the case, but it is. And not every lawyer, there's a wide spectrum among compensation, like how there is for doctors, right? I know plenty of lawyers billing, which is different than just working, right? Mm-hmm. Because with billing, if you have to bill 8 hours a day, let's say, the clock stops when you go to the bathroom. The clock stops when you talk to reception. The clock stops when, you try to go out and get lunch. The clock is stopping so many times throughout that day. And so I know people who are billing 55 to 60 hours a week, every single week, that are having to make the decision of, okay, it's around the holiday time. I need to choose between getting my car fixed or getting Christmas gifts for my nieces and nephews. And this is a real scenario. This is a real life example. And it's a lot. Right?
It's a lot. Huge nuances for you. There's the macro to which you spoke about what we're dealing, but then as Eric said, he wasn't aware. And I mean, we know that it is, as I referenced to Attorney Perry talking about the rigor, we were joking about one day, I was supposed to read or do something. And I was like, Sharice, she was like, well, the way I'm built. And it was made reference to, what you all have to do. So that is interesting in itself with all the other barriers. And I didn't mean to cut you off. Please finish your statement.
Oh, no, of course. And so with respect to our members, putting on very, very clear, direct programming, it is my goal that when people attend one or two programs from the MBLA that are substantive, that they're able to walk away with some key points, key things that they can implement right now to make a difference in their lives. So we put on financial literacy programming. We were having speakers speak to us about navigating the student loan crisis. We're having speakers speak to us about, different nonprofit jobs where you can get your student loans forgiven, but these jobs are actually paying a very significant amount of compensation, right? We're going to be talking to mental health professionals, who will talk to our members about navigating trauma in the workplace, right? What does it mean? What does it do to you when you go into the workplace every day and you are dealing with the biases, the harassment, the otherism every single day? And how do you navigate that? Because not everyone is in such a privileged position where they can just leave a job because it's toxic, right? Some people have to stay in those environments. And so trying to empower our members, educate our members, and encourage people to stay in the profession, which is a big thing. And in Massachusetts, we have so many law schools, I believe 9 law schools across the Commonwealth. And we have a number of Black attorneys coming to the state for their education. And of that number, there are people who actually have no intention of leaving Massachusetts, right? Massachusetts is a state where, they're saying, if I get a job here, I'll stay here. But they get followed in the department store one too many times, right? They have so many negative experiences interviewing at places. And the city we're losing great talent. Like, as much as we have so many powerhouses in this state and in this city in particular, we could have more. We could have many, many more. But there are many people who are saying, it doesn't feel like this city is for me, right? And I've done all the things that I was supposed to do. I got the degree. I got the extra degree. I went to work. I worked more than 40 hours a week. I gave back to my community. And yet I'm in this position where I may not feel as welcomed, right, in this state, or I may not be able to take care of myself the way that I would want to in this state. And it's something that the MBLA is very much trying to address.
It's so interesting, and I had to, I'm dealing with an attorney, so I should have a pen and paper. But you got to take notes because there's a few things in your response there, and I'm going to try to prioritize so we can stay in a flow. Yes. One of the things that stood out to me was you said that sometimes training attorneys in training and studying for the bar and things like that, and where they're going or their decision around whether they want to go, let's say, to be a prosecutor.
Yeah.
Or to be a public defender, and your reference into the nonprofit, it is helpful. It's almost like it's a catch-22, because if you get in a position, let's say Greater Boston Legal Services, if you get in there and you do some years, despite what's going on at the Supreme Court and all the debt cancellation, you can get some things forgiven. But then the salary that you make there, you get the offset from paying the loans, but the salary may still be an issue because there are other things that come with, training and being an attorney, let alone if you have a family. And so I can understand a decision. And the two top areas, fortunately or unfortunately, that I'm familiar with when it comes to dealing with lawyers is in the juvenile justice system. And so my orientation is either defense or prosecutor. And with that, I wanted to ask, there is a lot of chatter. You're in legal. There's a lot of chatter about the presidential election. I'm not asking you to make any sort of statement as you're representing the association today, but may I ask, from an attorney who has trained, and the topic of being a prosecutor or maybe moving in the space of defense has come up in this national conversation around national leadership. We'll frame it like that. How do we help community understand that sometimes that decision, because you did say a little bit, I'm not going to put words in your mouth verbatim, but sometimes I think I heard the word conflict, where they want to go and do the work, but sometimes the loans and being able to buy a house, you talked about the city and doing everything they're supposed to do, but being priced out. And okay, there's a lot there that I'm trying to put before you. So your response to just sort of those 2 points about, if you could go a little bit deeper about the decision, and that really gives us a purview into sometimes why some lawyers may go in the prosecuting or corporate and stay away from the courts, period, because you got to make it this. If you want a family, if you want a house, if you don't want to, you want to have more than $250 left in your check a week or something. It's just amazing, as Eric said before, to just sort of get this perspective of being an attorney.
Yes. And so I've only ever worked in private practice. I've never worked in the public interest space.
Yes.
I've done a lot of board service, and I've done some pro bono work. Mm-hmm. But I will say I did have an internship a long time ago at one of the district courts, and I recall interning at the DA's office, and there were so many individuals there that clearly were not from the community, right? That clearly, and this was years ago, so probably over a decade ago. And it just dawned on me that it truly is a privilege to be able to do this work and to work as a prosecutor and to be able to afford to do so comfortably. Right now, I don't know all the numbers of everything, but when I recall walking into that office, and I remember there was this woman getting arraigned for stealing flip-flops from the dollar store. And they were going through the charges. And again, I don't do any criminal work, so I'm probably mixing up the terms. But I remember thinking, are we going to get to the issue of why this woman was at the point of needing to steal flip-flops? Like, are we going to talk about that? Or are we just going to talk about the charges piece? And then going back to the office and hearing the discussion around the charges and the decisions that were made during that hearing, and the conversation and the back and forth with the judge, I just remember thinking that there was something missing, right? It's just very tough. And the idea also that everyone in private practice is getting, a hefty salary is just false. There are people working at law firms who, again, just based on the hours, right, working 40, 50 hours and getting paid, I have an example, 70K working 65 hours every week billable, right? $70,000, but you were in the office 6 days a week. You're billing 65 hours a week. I mean, it's difficult to navigate these numbers from any position, from any stance.
Let me ask you, some years ago, I used to work with medical trainees. And if you remember, some years ago, through a self-care and the ability to treat patients and not be exhausted, there was change in, quote unquote, the duty hours that the medical industry adopted to take in some consideration for the human being. Doctors and lawyers are often comparable. You want your child to grow up to be a doctor or a lawyer, or, that's the presumed profession where you're good. Do you ever see any sort of movement within other entities like yours in different parts of the state, even away from, Black and brown, but just the industry period, where maybe there is some and these, let me ask a clarifying question. These aren't trainees. They're done. These are full bona fide.
These are fantastic lawyers practicing 7, 8, 9 years with more experience than I have. Yes.
I just somehow maybe my brain just blocked out that these are real accomplished attorneys, and these are a trainee space that's doing the. So even after you've trained in 8, 9 years in, you're still at around $70,000 at doing about 65 on average.
So I won't say on average, but
there
are a number of attorneys in this space, right? So the idea that working in private practice just automatically sets you up, it's just not the case, right? And you have to think about resources coming in. So sometimes if you're working at, let's say a small size firm, you may not have the resources for a paralegal. You might not have the resources for, a full-time receptionist. And so because of that, you have the attorney doing, additional admin work in addition to the legal work, in addition to the billing work that needs to happen in order to make these workplaces successful.
To even get paid. That's
And then we of course have attorneys that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars each and every year, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. But when you look in those spaces, generally they're usually the only attorney of color or the only Black attorney in that space, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then the question becomes why, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if the issue is, okay, well, we can't find Black talent, which was an excuse we've heard year after year, then come to the MBLA. I can give you 5 people right now, right, that are probably, that are super talented, that can probably meet you where you're at, that can probably do what you need them to do, and I do this for internships as well, right? I'm asking these organizations, these nonprofits, these agencies, these law firms to send their internships opportunities to the MBLA, and we will get them out to the law students, because we're still hearing, oh, we can't find any diverse law students. But if you were to walk into an MBLA event, if you were to walk into the fundraiser that we had on Friday, you would see a whole, 50, 60 plus individuals, talented, willing, able, and ready to do the work. And so how do we make sure these opportunities are accessible, right? And this is one thing that's coming up. So the big mission of the MBLA is to increase diversity, to advance the representation of Black lawyers in the Commonwealth. And the very thing that we stand for is literally under attack. You have organizations being sued for their summer diversity fellowship programs, right? And even if these lawsuits are not successful, right? And these companies are winning. Just the process is a deterrent. The cost, the financial cost, the time cost, the resources that you have to put into fighting a lawsuit like that, that's enough to make people just get rid of these programs altogether. And, if you think about, I'm not a historian, but I was speaking with someone the other day who spoke about how apparently the Massachusetts transit system was created in such a way where, what did you say? Maybe where more urban communities could not get to, like the city of Boston, or people had to, they made sure it were created in such a way where it resulted in Black people having to take 1 or 2 or 3 trains to get to where they wanted to go.
Versus a straight shot on the commuter rail. Absolutely. And we're closer. Mm-hmm.
And then I hear about what happened in New York City a long time ago, where bridges were put in places so that buses coming from urban areas could not get to the beach or something like that. The tunnels were too low so that the city buses could not get to the beach. And I remember hearing these stories and thinking, there's no way I could even think of that. I would not even think of trying to find a way to deprive people in such a strategic, diabolical way. And so when I think about the intentionality that went into keeping Black people out, right? Even the ABA, I recall reading an article where it was talking about how Black people were not allowed to join the American Bar Association, and how they added demographic information to the application because they accidentally let a Black person in to the American Bar Association. So they started adding demographic
to make sure someone doesn't slip through.
Right. And I read this article last year, and I was just so surprised to think that someone was thinking of this tactic to keep Black people out. And so again, if there was so much intentionality in the laws and the rules and the way our roadway systems were created to keep Black people out, we need to have that level of intentionality to bring Black people and other people of color back in. That's the only way we're going to rectify it. And when you have programs that are meant to increase diversity, bring in qualified candidates, right? Make sure that they're paying attention to these stats, make sure that they're paying attention to, how are they recruiting? What are their HR policies? How are people getting through the system? If people are only hiring people that look like them, that meet the cultural fit, what does that mean for the future of this organization? And it's interesting. I mean, I was not thinking that leading the MBLA would require me to think bigger than just our lawyers, right? And bigger than just our members. But in this time, it's really critical with diversity being under attack, and DEI is literally what we stand for. And so, there's a lot to be excited about because there's a lot to do, and we have a team, and there's, we need to mobilize. But at the same time, it does take a very intentional effort to kind of protect your well-being while you're navigating this, right? You're trying to talk about issues that are so close to home, right? We talk about Juneteenth, right? That was 2 generations ago, right?
And
when
just
slavery was ended 2 generations ago.
Mm-hmm.
I met my great-grandmother in Texas who was a slave, right? 2 generations. We are not that far. And I really hope that, the organizations that are focused on this continue to invest in this effort and see the urgency behind needing to stand up for this effort and stand up for DEI and stand up for inclusion. Because if not, what does that mean? What is the future going to be? Like, we went from, according to the ABA, 4.8 to 5% over 10 years, right? And this is with diversity programs.
And that's 0.2 percentage growth.
0.2. It's very easy to backtrack when not that much progress has been made.
It's one thing that you said, and I want to be intentional, Attorney Epperson-Temple, to end on a good note. Anyone that's watching and then that knows anything about body language and dynamics, you can see that this is an issue. This isn't just a post and a position. This is something that you're very dedicated to. And so I want to make space to one name that we as a community appreciate you and your colleagues for making the decision. A lot of you in a time where we didn't know about COVID, we didn't know about George Floyd, we knew about some things, but I think post 2016 at the level of boldness, where people have demonstrated their racism. Some of you were in the midst of making the decision and still sticking to it to train. And so we thank you and salute you, Black woman, attorney, Black woman, for doing this for us. And I do, again, want to be intentional about ending on a good note. And something you said there, we're going to take a quick break and then end with that. Maybe one more question and then end on a good note. When you said that there's still work being done and you're excited about things that are happening. And so we're going to take a quick break, folks, and come right back. And here's some of the good in the hood that's going on. I think it's, and again, to Eric's point, I think it's important for us to understand as a community when we see that aspiring lawyer, that 8th grader, the one that's taking the mock trial a class in school, we figure out a way to wrap ourselves around them and support them. We do it with the aspiring basketball player. Mm-hmm. Everybody from the hood won't let them get in a gang, tell the gangs don't touch them and whatnot. How do we take the aspiring little girl that wants to be a lawyer, the aspiring young man, and wrap ourselves around them? Because all they're going to be needed, and we need to almost be at an accelerated, like almost mechanical assembly line sort of manner to pump in some Blackness into the legal criminal system, into corporate, into, we're going to, I'm talking about ending on a good note. We're going to take a quick break, everyone, and we'll be back with you in just about 30 seconds.
I'm a very sensitive person, and I feel the pain of my people. They know me. They call on me, and I assure them that I'm not a provider, but I am one who cares. I always say to them, well, it's better to know than not to know, because if you know, you can do something about it. Think about the loved ones around you. Think about the ones that love seeing you come through that door. Take the step and get tested. That's it.
Save lives and get screened for colon cancer. For more information, visit boston.gov/cancer.
Hey everyone, thanks for staying with us. Or if you're just joining, we just finished our first segment in speaking with the president of the Massachusetts Black Lawyer Association about a lot of the work we're doing. And we got in, you all know we move into equity, mental health, a space here. And we got into a conversation about just some of the real life experience about our not just train. I keep moving on this trainees because I don't think my brain has fathomed. And, through the years, I've heard about, doctors and lawyers post school, they're paying their bills out. But at the level, again, to Eric's point, to which we're learning about what Black and brown young people and accomplished attorneys 8-9 years out are still dealing with inequity around the rigor in the work versus the pay. That's in general. We haven't talked about the pay difference between men and women. And so there was a lot there. I encourage you to go back and watch the first segment. However, I want to make sure that we end on a good note because Attorney Epperson-Temple got a little bit excited there that despite what's going on, there is a lot of opportunity to do some great work. And so in your programming, and I want to name that I love the intentionality of what you all are doing in not just helping them. I don't know if lawyers have to get CEUs and things, but getting them into the technical, and this is the latest law update and your newsletter, but you're really addressing the whole, the human of the attorney and everything that comes with that. So we want to celebrate that. Is there any other programming? I remember Attorney Perry some years ago, MBLA, a couple of youth serving organizations, Boston Police Department, I think the DA's office and some others, they come together and do this event about being aware of the law, things like that. Is there that and other programming that the MBLA is doing for the community?
Yes. So we are definitely keeping, with all that, Sharice Perry and also Stisha Emanuel, very, very big on our Know Your Rights programming.
Yes.
So we are working on setting up a few of those. The last few that we have had have been at Lena Park. And I believe previously we used to have some at one of the YMCAs, but that is on our programming schedule as well. We're also doing some programming, volunteering programming with Pine Street Inn, which is the other board that I serve on, where we're going to play bingo with the sheltered guests. And we have a number of additional substantive programs, but also kind of fun things to help build community amongst our members, right? And sometimes people are dealing with a lot of isolation in the workplace, and the one time in the day that they are feeling comfortable or that they are just surrounded by other people of color is when they're coming to the MBLA or other affinity bar organization type events. And so we definitely want to add that as well. But in addition to some of the community service work that we're doing, the MBLA also has an attorney referral program, which is where people can fill out a very short 1-minute survey and then get paired with potential attorneys that can maybe assist with their legal problem. And all of that is on our website, our attorney referral program. So we're trying to make sure that legal access information is accessible. Of course, not every attorney that someone reaches out to may be able to take on a case or represent someone fully, but being able to point them to resources, right? You mentioned GBLS, we have Volunteer Lawyers Project, the Women's Bar Foundation, and then also directing them to talented attorneys that can help them with, some corporate issues that come up as well. We have business attorneys, estate planning attorneys, M&A attorneys, employment attorneys as well, all on that attorney referral program. So that's on our website. Please have your listeners check that out as well as a resource.
Absolutely. I'm showing it on the screen here. Sometimes folks take screenshots when we show a resource. The other piece is I wanted to let folks know that right in the comments, there's an active hyperlink that you can click that and click to the Massachusetts Black Lawyers Association to get information about their programming. If you are a Black lawyer, I presumably Black and Brown in the Black Lawyers Association, is it specifically, Black, or is it Black and Brown, the diaspora across the board, if folks are interested?
Right. Specifically Black, I use the term Black and Brown just to make sure it includes everyone.
Yes.
But also if, we're looking for allies, we're looking for people that want to help us do this work. Outside of that, the MBLA, we have a very big fundraising goal this year. The goal is to raise $100,000. It's going to fund our scholarships for 5 years. I might have mentioned this earlier, but we give out 4 scholarships between $11,000 and $16,000 each and every year to deserving law students. That is going to help people not have to work while studying for the bar, right? It is a privilege to not have to work while studying to take this test. And many people don't have that privilege, right? Or being able to help with the cost of buying books. A law student recently said that her books for the semester cost $1,600. $1,600, and that she likely for the semester, and that she likely would not be able to return them because there were going to be some updates and whatnot, right? So really trying to help address the financial burden that is encouraging law students to leave law school, right? Because sometimes they're feeling like it's easier to just pay back a year's worth of debt and do something else than continue to accumulate the debt with the interest, take the bar, which is at a cost. I don't recall the cost, but I think it was a couple $100s, and then practice, right? And so trying to do what we can to keep people who want to practice law, get them to that point, right? So we have our scholarship fund. It's called the Building the Legacy Scholarship Fund. And then also, as part of that 100K goal, in addition to funding our scholarships for 5 years, we're also looking to pad our operating account, right? So the MBLA is very, very fortunate. This year, I've expanded the leadership team. We have 15 directors and officers, and we have 2 additional leadership positions. We have our chief of staff and our student affairs liaison. Our team of 17, we work very hard. But they are dedicated, they are resolute, they are focused, and they are investing so much in this organization. So the organization is definitely in good hands with that team, and I'm very grateful for all of them and seeing what we can accomplish during this programming year.
There was another sort of body language and observation. It's just doing this for almost 5 years, that a skill that has been honed a little bit here. You talked about the team.
Yes.
There was a different look. There was a different energy there. So you love your team, and that you consider that a part of the core of you guys' success?
Absolutely. I mean, it takes a lot to do what we do. We have full-time jobs. We have no paid staff. We have no executive director. It is just us. And we still have to pay taxes. We're not a young professionals group. We are a board with we are a business. We owe fiduciary duties, legal duties to our members. We have to pay our taxes. We have to work with accountants. We have to do our state filings. It's a real business. And this morning, at some point, I don't recall the exact time, but at some point between 7 and 8:45, I'm getting emails from the immediate past president talking about how she's going to assist with the matter. I'm getting emails from our student affairs liaison talking about how can we be more present in our law schools, right? One of our key focuses for the year as well is to make sure that we're not the Boston Black Lawyers Association, but that we really act as the Massachusetts Black Lawyers Association. Yep. And a few weeks ago, we were in Springfield, Western New England, making sure that we were connecting with those law students, making sure that they know that we are a resource, making sure that they know about our scholarships, and making sure that they know that they can reach out to the MBLA for support. Right? If you don't have a mentor, the MBLA will be a mentor to you. Right? If you don't have someone that you can go to for advice, if you are trying to figure out how to navigate a tricky situation at work, right? The first time I dealt with bias at work, I did not even know what I was dealing with. I just did not know. I just was thinking,
hold on, as a lawyer, you
as a lawyer. Well, also I was 25 at the time. Okay. But I didn't know. It was the first time that someone did not like me at work. And I'm thinking, oh, this is interesting. Someone doesn't like me. But recalling those situations and the conversations that I was having with other law students, and we all didn't really know what we were talking about at the time. But if I had relayed that to, people who are more senior in the profession, they would have said, okay, maybe time to think about an exit plan, or maybe this is not the place where you're going to get, that investment early on in your career, which is really critical. Maybe you should think about something different, right? And if you do not have your team of advisors, I say every person should have their own board of advisors. I have 5 people that I could call right now if I ran into any issue with anything at work related to the MBLA or, anything going on with what I do in the courtroom, right? If you don't have your board of advisors, if you don't have your team of mentors and sponsors, you can come to the MBLA and we will be that for you. We also have a formal mentorship program, but it has not launched yet. But that will be on our website once we get that up and running.
Attorney Epperson-Temple, I really enjoyed our time today. It was enlightening. And again, one of the things I would love for our viewers and community to get out of this is that I'm going to put you on the spot before we end. I can't say it enough that when we see the little boy, we see the little girl, we see the high school student, we see the first year law student, it is important that we figure out a way to support them. I remember growing up in church, and oftentimes you would see the mothers and the deacons and the students would come home for college. And as the offering, or they were walking by for offering, you would see them put a little something in their hand. And so we need to figure out to do, some way of doing something like that to make sure we encourage our young people and our active law students. And also, how can I frame this? And I'll be transparent. I had a situation where I had utilized a Black lawyer once, and things didn't work out the way I had hoped they would. Yeah. And I wasn't able to fully compensate as I thought. And early on, I was joking, you know how folks are. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take it. I wound up being in a situation where I couldn't stand up to that. I named that because when we also utilize these lawyers, we need to make sure that we pay the bill. And out of all this conversation and some serious stuff we talked about, you ain't dipped once, you dipped right there. So I'm just saying, so we had these conversations here to inform the community, to change society. And so those are 2 main takeaways away from the awareness, and to be more sensitive to when you encounter a law student or a lawyer. I'm now informed in a different way and really going to ask some different type of questions about checking on them.
Yeah.
And for them, you don't know what, not a legal question, not how are you doing? A book's expensive here. Here's a little $25. And even if they go use it for Starbucks for 2 days, that's going to help them cram. I'm just saying, every little bit helps, correct?
It does. Absolutely. I was just laughing at the price of Starbucks.
$20, so I went the other day and I ordered, and I, usually you just go and but I looked at the price change on the register. I said, oh, that little article about, the capitalism and using inflation, but there's a potential case there. I'm not going to mess with it. And so Attorney Epperson-Temple, I'm going to ask you to do me a huge favor. I'm going to put you full screen and ask you if you've probably done it. If we were to put this out to some young people that are considering going into law, the realness about everything you said, I appreciate you for that. What is it that you would say to young people that are aspiring to go into law, sports law, which we need? There's an episode I need to send you a link to. There's an attorney that did a correlation between the Atlantic slave trade and how she talked to us about a book, The $40 Million Slave, and how a lot of the sports industry through a legal process is almost still, and most of us are the biggest population of some of the sports field.
Oh, interesting.
Somebody make sure y'all remind me to get her the episode. It was just less than 2 weeks ago, and I was just like amazed. And so if you're considering being a sports attorney, if you're considering being a defense attorney, or even, a prosecutor, because we need people to prosecute the law, what is it that you would say to young people in our community to encourage them? And then end with what is it that you would say to an active trainee right now?
Okay.
I got her taking notes.
Okay. For a law student, I would say that do not give up based on how your performance has potentially gone early on, right? So the early indicators of success at law school do not directly translate to your success as a lawyer, right? You can get all C's in law school and be a phenomenal lawyer who ends up having, that major trial that ends up on Netflix or something like that. And to not ascribe more meaning to a bad grade than you need to, right? Especially with the way that the grades are done. Sometimes they're done on a curve. It's been almost a decade since I've been out, but on that grading scale, that is not indicative of whether or not you'll be able to be successful or not. And just keep plugging away and doing your best and try to meet with people that are doing exactly what you want to do, having those informational interviews so you can connect with people. And when you have those interviews, ask what they did wrong, right? I got this from one of my mentors. She said that when law students meet with her, they ask about everything she did right. How did she get here? How did she get here? How did she get there? But they don't ask about what pitfalls, she had to deal with, or what mistakes did she make, or what things did she, could she have done better to help her get to her goal faster? So I would say to ask those questions, connect with people, also protect your mental health. Do not lose yourself to law. Do not lose yourself to what you hope your career will be. Continue to invest in your hobbies, those interests, cultivate your non-work identity. And so in that way, you'll have a more fulfilling career, because it's doing the work can be difficult. It can be very taxing, right? And so you definitely want to have that outlet to de-stress. You also want to have things outside of your non-work identity, so you can see yourself as a more multi-dimensional person, which we all are. And then with respect to attorneys, I guess my advice would be very, very similar in terms of cultivating your non-work identity. I understand that there will be times that you'll have to cancel that 6 p.m. appointment or painting class or workout class or something like that on a weekday, but really try to do what you can to invest in the different aspects of yourself. It's going to keep you well-rounded. It's also going to help you meet with people that probably think a little bit differently than you do, right? So it's helpful when I go home for the holidays and people remind me that it's really wild to be working so much, right? But it becomes normalized when you're kind of in your little work bubble, in your legal sphere, where everyone's talking about how much they work and what they do, and how they sacrifice the vacation here or there or whatnot. And then in addition to that, for people who are practicing, be willing to invest in yourself even when it may seemingly not be in your best interest at the particular time. So I'm talking about taking like the short-term losses for the long-term gains, right? So sometimes it makes sense to do that invisible work, to sit on that committee, to work on that case with maybe that difficult partner or something like that, to help your skill set grow the way that you want it to, right? Sometimes it makes sense to maybe not hit the highest tier of your bonus schedule so that you can actually get experience, or take more CLEs, or invest in learning and staying up to date with the substantive knowledge of how we practice, right? So sometimes it makes sense to do things that may not have a direct benefit right now, but thinking about that long-term benefit in the future.
I wanted to be specific and ask you to do that so we can clip it up and post it, encourage some, clip it up, put it on social media reels, and just, encourage some other attorneys and aspiring attorneys to do so, because we hear this often about seeing someone that looks like you, whatnot, and to be able to hear from you and hear that message coming from you, I think is so important for our young people. And again, the active, it's going to take me probably a few days for it to register that a lot of that financial struggle like that is with our attorneys, almost, you said 8 to 9, almost a decade out. One would presume, that a lawyer is coasting and they go and practice, do a case, win big, depending on where they are. And then they, and it's thank you for keeping it real with us. about the experience. I just wanted to note that thanks to Miss Teresa, she did put, and this is the author. Here it goes. $40 Million Slaves by William C. Roden. It's definitely a book you want to check out. And Miss Teresa, I know, will make sure she reminds me to get you the link for the attorney. That episode, and you got me in a passion point. That episode, sis. it really, and this is one that I'll get you the video if you want. I would encourage you to have your or get it out to your membership. I have no problem with you doing that, because it just really, for any of them that are going into that field or advising, you say people come to you all for advice. You got a junior in college that may hit one of your members up for some advice. That episode, it's going to definitely inform them. So thank you for being with us today. I appreciate it. I appreciate your authenticity and your passion and sincerity for the post in which you're serving now. And so we look forward to hearing more from you, and keep us abreast. Let us know when you do the next Know the Law so we can help get the word out.
Absolutely. Will do. Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it.
It was my honor and privilege. Thank you so much. Tell Attorney Perry, even though I can probably text her. And I meant to actually text her the episode so she can jump on if she wasn't in court. But thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Here's the name. I'm sorry, Michelle. Thank you. Google or look up the name Bria Clemens.
Okay.
That's who it was. I'll still get you the episode, but thank you. Because again, I know how attorneys are. Within a few minutes of me getting off, you boop, 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 boop. Thank you for being with us today, Attorney Epperson-Temple. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You too, hon. Thanks. Folks, I hope that this was informative for you, and also will encourage you to maybe endear our aspiring attorneys differently. And I'm talking about our young people, middle school, high school students that are doing the mock trials and things like that. Like, let's do our best to encourage them to keep doing what they're doing. Again, I want to thank everybody that sent salutations for the birthday. They're still coming in. And again, we were intentional. I did get a little, Leonard, what's up, brother? Good to see you in the room. I did get a little, I didn't get invited. I didn't really invite anyone. I just posted the pictures, and those that came. And I know some desired maybe to in the environment, may have not been easy to get to, or some folks wasn't hitting, the club or the places where I was going. But I thank everyone for the birthday salutations. This year was different. And what I mean by that is, I don't know if it was Monday or Tuesday, something clicked in me. I've spent 2 years in my 50s, and I'm beginning my third. And it's just very different in a good way for me. But that good for me, some may not view it as good for them. And I'm going to take this next week and still kind of be low key and take care of some things. But please never let the sighting of what this young man from Roxbury via Bromley Heath housing projects that grew up and was birthed to a single teenage mother that grew up in a period of crazy violence and drug epidemic. Between, I used to say God and my grandmother praying, but between my mother, God, my grandmother praying, and my mother, despite all, still here. 53 years. Never been stabbed, never been shot. And I always say this and people laugh, but I used to just say never been stabbed, shot, or killed. And still here. Not perfect. Definitely have never done it all right, and still make huge mistakes. But it's just something different. And so please don't allow some humble flexing or some citing of some accomplishments, despite some things, make you think that Jimmy is head's getting big and all this other stuff. So anyway, we won't get too much into that. So I'm going to get off of here. Tashad, appreciate you. Hey, Belinda, good to see you, and everybody else. Sharon Cornelius. I know she was in here somewhere, and I don't get to say it as much when I have guests on. But yes, I won't get into names now, but Lisa, yes, you will be able to go watch the replay. And I don't know if this is a UCB member, but replay watching should be able to count as a UCB number. Sharon or Ma, let me know if people come in late from UCB, if they're able to get points for watching the replay. I say they should because they're still watching it. So, Ed, thank you, brother. I appreciate you, sir. I'm going to get off of here before all those starts. I am not nobody's, Miss Teresa, I know what you mean. I love the spirit of it, but no way near nobody's divine. Sharon said it's okay to have a big head. Let me know. Yes, replay is fine as long as it's done. Okay. So your integrity, you got to watch the whole replay. I need to put some cold words at, well, these days you can just speed up to the end. So put a cold word at the end to see if you watched it. All right. I'm really going in. Oh, you all please keep Miss Teresa in prayer, please. Going in for surgical procedure tomorrow morning. So keep her in prayer. I said when she first started going through this, little procedures and whatnot, that's fine. But the major surgery and whatnot, about which they were talking, still ain't had it. So we just believe. Okay. Lisa, welcome. One of our other UCB members. Thank you for being a part of the Java family. And Miss Mother Sharon Cornelia said that you do get points for watching the after watch. So you jumped in now, count those few minutes, and then go back and watch the after watch. All right, I'm getting off of here, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow morning. My guest tomorrow morning, hold on for 1 second. Let me get this queued up here. Why isn't this thing working with me? Hello. Okay, I don't know why this thing doesn't want to work with me right now. There it is. Go back, library. I'm going to leave it alone. We have a guest tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We'll see you guys tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Thanks for tuning in today. Now I'm aggravated because I want to know why it's not working. All right. Peace, y'all. Talk to you soon.